Thanks, Brian, and thanks to Research Commons for hosting me. Thank you all for attending this workshop, which is called Grant Writing 101, Writing a Grant Proposal for Private Funders. My name is Kathy Hunt, and I'm a Proposal Development Specialist in the Office of Foundation Relations. I'm joined today by my colleague, Brianna Yock, who's a Director in Foundation Relations, and she'll serve as a moderator for questions later on. Today, I'll be starting my workshop with a brief introduction to my unit and the services that we provide. I'll then discuss how to identify potential funders and the process to submitting grant applications. So Ohio State's Office of Foundation Relations is a central resource unit within University Advancement. Our focus is on private foundations and managing the institutional relationship with private funders. The Foundation Relations team supports engagement with private foundations on behalf of the university, including main campus, the Wexner Medical Center, and regional campuses. And we work along with university leadership and faculty to build and strengthen mutually beneficial partnerships between private foundations who are exploring and making investments in Ohio State's education and research enterprise. You can see here on this figure our team and the areas that each person supports. Foundation Relations is a team of development and grants professionals who are dedicated to fostering successful funding partnerships between private foundation donors and Ohio State. We support things like project identification, strategic planning and engagement, proposal development, solicitation, as well as stewardship activities. In addition, there are foundations that expressly require only designated officials approach them. And in these instances, our office will be the point of contact for these funders. Because of this, we ask that you please contact Foundation Relations before you approach a foundation. We can offer background on our current relationship, and we can also offer guidance on the best methods of contact. Foundation Relations coordinates with several internal partners, including faculty and university leadership, other advancement staff, research deans and grant managers, as well as the Office of Sponsored Programs. However, we don't duplicate supports extended by sponsored programs or grants teams, but rather we complement them. Our team helps to streamline and enhance engagement with funders with the overall goal of increasing private foundation donor investments. Foundation Relations plays several roles across the university. And one thing that we do is prospect identification, where we identify and share viable funding opportunities across Ohio State's research enterprise. To do this, we actively curate a list of funding opportunities released by private foundations. Currently, we're managing about 200 private foundations, which are principally large national foundations making investments in research. But we also do work with several smaller regional or family foundations that do limit their giving to campus. While our main focus is on grants at the $100,000 or greater level, we do recognize that sometimes a smaller grant award can help to not only advance some critical research, but it can also serve as a gateway into a relationship with a private foundation. However, the level of support their offers can extend regarding proposal development for smaller opportunities simply isn't as extensive. We also meet with academic and medical leadership to learn of their funding and research priorities, and then help them identify funders and opportunities whose investment priorities align with these goals. And finally, we regularly share relevant funding opportunities with department chairs and faculty. We also work to support strategic engagement and stewardship, where we facilitate connections, support ongoing engagement, and strengthen the relationships with managed foundation prospects. To do this, we manage the portfolios of private foundations who have the capacity and interest to invest in Ohio State. We build and update strategic engagement and stewardship plans for managed prospects, leveraging and supporting university leadership and key faculty as they build and strengthen these partnerships. As a central liaison to foundations, we work to track engagement across the university to ensure that our leadership is fully aware of what the status of our relationships are at any point in time. We work closely with funded faculty around stewardship activities and actively track submissions and new funding awards through a close partnership with the Office of Sponsored Programs and unit-based research offices. We can also help plan and support logistical coordination of campus visits with private foundation representatives. A third facet of our work is solicitation, and we partner with faculty to ensure that future grant requests to private foundations are not only well aligned, but crafted in a way that will be highly competitive and increase the chance of an investment or an award being made. To do this, we can share foundation investment priorities and recent engagement in award history. We can help facilitate conversations with the funder. We offer to review and provide feedback on draft proposal narratives. And we can also review proposals for compliance with funder guidelines and offer basic proofing edits. Finally, if funds must route through OSU Foundation, we can assist in securing advanced approvals, and we can support the upload of submission into foundation portals. We also manage the limited submission process here at Ohio State. Limited submissions are when a funder restricts the number of applicants that can come from an institution. And so we curate and post these on the Office of Research Limited Submission portal, and you can find them viewable alongside federally limited opportunities. With these limited submission opportunities, along with other opportunities, we'll support the nominees in developing competitive and responsive proposals. So what is a private foundation? It's a non-governmental entity that is established as a nonprofit or a charitable trust primarily for charitable purposes. It's essentially a way for a family or a corporation to make and direct charitable donations to their particular areas of interest. Foundations can make philanthropic grants to organizations or individuals for things like scientific, educational, cultural, or religious purposes. And they receive nearly all of their financial support from a single individual or family or corporation. And there's a board of trustees or directors which will oversee the grant giving process. Because of how they're set up, private foundations have broad latitude in determining funding interests and how they choose to perform charitable giving. Private foundations can be a great source for funding. In 2019, giving from private foundations totaled over $75 billion, which is almost double what they gave in 2004. So that's $75 billion in general. But how does this look for giving to higher education? So these two graphs depict the rise of private research funding to universities over the last few decades. The dashed orange line on the left is non-federally funded dollars awarded to universities, and the graph on the right depicts nonprofit awards to universities. And as you can see, both lines have been steadily increasing. In 2019, nonprofit organizations gave nearly $5.7 billion to universities, which is a more than 50% increase over the last 8 years. Here at Ohio State, we see a similar rise in private foundation investments in the last few years, with nearly $90 million given to our university in 2019. So what do private foundations typically fund? Ones that award grants to Ohio State are largely directing their investments towards innovative research and discovery. This is because as a tier 1 research institution, this is where Ohio State is most competitive. There are some smaller or regional foundations that invest in innovative outreach programming that is associated with or within Ohio State, such as Moms to Be in Life Sports, though. Foundations that invest in Ohio State typically won't fund things like general operating support or capital expenses, endowments, or scholarships. There are private family foundations that are not typically professional staff that do invest in scholarships and endowment. But here within Ohio State, these foundations would be managed by major gift officers rather than the Office of Foundation Relations. Instead, our office, as I mentioned, focuses on managing these larger national foundations that are professionally staffed. They actively release funding calls, and they have a scholarly or scientific review board to help make funding recommendations. So the first step in securing an award from a private foundation is finding funders whose purpose and priorities align with your projects. And there are several opportunities and options out there. The first is fee-based databases such as Foundation Search and Foundation Directory. We, as Foundation Relations, maintain some subscriptions to fee-based databases, but industry licenses are cost prohibitive. So unfortunately, we can't share this information. But there are a wide variety of free online resources, including internet-based search engines like Google, Foundation and Association websites, as well as GuideStar, which contains information on about 2.4 million nonprofits. There's also SPIN, and SPIN is one that I'd like to touch on. SPIN contains about 40,000 opportunities from 10,000 sponsors worldwide. And Ohio State has paid for an enterprise-wide license, which means that you can establish your own login and set up searches to meet your particular criteria. If you haven't explored SPIN yet, I really recommend that you check it out. And if a foundation pops up in your search that looks interesting, I encourage you to reach out to our office to learn more about that funder, determine if it's a good fit for your work, and secure support in developing an approach. As I mentioned earlier, there's the OSU Funding Opportunities website, which includes the limited submission opportunities as well. So our team actively searches for funding opportunities across all of these methods. And we've curated this extensive list of opportunities that we share regularly. And we're happy to help it serve as a resource to you as you explore funding from private foundations. So after you find a potential funder, it's important to look closely to determine if they're a good fit with your work. One of the best ways to do this is by examining their previously funded proposals to get a better idea of their funding history. Some questions to ask when determining if a funder is a good fit. Who have they funded in the past? Do they fund universities or nonprofits? Are there certain demographics like gender or race or career stage? What types of support do they provide and what will they cover? Basically, do they fund what you need covered, or do they fund what you need funded, like salaries or equipment? Where do they fund? This is important because even if they say they fund nationally, it's important to check their grant making history to see if there are hot spots where they primarily tend to focus their funding. How do they fund? Are they releasing calls for proposals, or do they have an invitation only process? And finally, how much do they award? What is that standard range for recently awarded grants? The next step is to determine your readiness and alignment. Are you well suited and prepared to submit a proposal with this funder? Assessing the following items can help determine your fit and increase your chances of success. You should consider the need of your goal. What is the problem that your proposal addresses? And why is this an important challenge to solve? Basically, who will care? You need to prove that this is a vital problem that needs a solution. So it's important if you can include any hard facts. Once again, make sure that the foundation that you're applying to includes this as a priority area. Consider your methodology. How will you solve the problem or meet your objectives? What methods are you using and why? And what preliminary data do you have to support your project, if any? And here, local or pilot data is definitely a good support. Speaking of support, do you have the support of your department or your institution? Will they offer any assistance such as course release or protected time or other resources? Consider direction. Who will direct and manage this project, and what are their qualifications? What other staff would you need for this project? In this case, you want to show that you and the others working on this project have the background and expertise to be successful. Consider your target audience. What are the groups that will benefit from this proposal? And identify things like their demographic area, their geographic area or other demographics to help be a little more specific. Consider your timeline. What is your anticipated timeline? How long do you expect this project to take? Who will your key collaborators be? Who will be working with you on this project, and what skills will they bring? You'll obviously have to consider your budget. How will your money be spent? And is this amount reasonable given the efforts needed to complete this project? Likewise, consider the other funding sources. Have you approached any other federal or non-federal funders? And have other funders supported this project currently or in the past? You want to consider the impact of your project. What are the potential impacts and how can you measure them? Would it be possible to scale this proposal up or replicate it in other areas? For project impact, it's important that your outcomes are measurable. Finally, consider your project assessment. What tools and metrics will you use to evaluate the project's success? What data needs to be collected and analyzed? It's important that you have a way to track your success because you need to have a way to identify the overall impacts that your work will have. Self-assessing your readiness and alignment will save time and effort for both you and the funder. You should think through each of these areas and critically assess if your proposed project is ready for investment and if it's well aligned to a particular funder's areas of interest. Right now, are there any questions that anyone needs to ask or has right now? I'll pause for a minute. No? Okay. So once you've determined that you have a good fit with the funder, it's time to start writing. And in many cases, the first thing that a private foundation asks for is a letter of intent or a letter of inquiry. We call these LOIs. It's basically a vetting mechanism for the foundation to determine if they're interested in learning more about the project or the concept that's being pitched. It can help the foundation identify proposals that are best suited for the grant they receive or they offer, and will weed out the ones it's not interested in. As the writer of the LOI, your goal is to make it compelling so that you're invited to submit a full proposal to the foundation. This letter of intent is typically short, usually 1 to 3 pages, and it describes your proposed research and its alignment to the funder's priorities or that call that the letter of intent is about. This is going to be the foundation's first impression of you, and first impressions are so important. Foundations are going to look for a well-crafted and well-aligned letter of intent to invite to a full application. So as such, it's critical that you carefully read the call and you precisely follow funder guidelines. So if your LOI is favorably reviewed, you'll be invited to submit a full proposal, and each foundation will have distinct guidelines. I'm going to only briefly touch on this subject in this training, but if you're interested in learning more about what goes into the letter of intent and the full proposal, please consider attending my next workshop, which is going to be on December 1st. And this is going to go into more details about this process. So each foundation can have a slightly different full proposal guidelines, but these are some of the basic structures or the basic pieces that go in a full proposal. They often include a summary or an abstract, which, as the name implies, acts as a summary of your proposal. You'll include a problem statement, which is a clear and evidence-supported description of the problem that you want to solve. You'll discuss the background and the significance, addressing why your proposed work is important in your field. You'll have some specific aims, which describe what will be accomplished or tested in the field. If you have any preliminary studies, this could be great to include any relevant pilot research that you've already conducted related to this project. You should include your research plan and your methods, things that describe your approach to conducting your research. You'll have to include your budget as well as a budget justification often. This is a line item and a narrative to help explain what you need and why you need it. Often, a full proposal will ask for bio sketches, and these help PIs showcase the relevant expertise and experience in an area. Finally, some full proposals ask for a document about your resources and facilities available that help show the supporting services and resources that a PI has access to. So in drafting your proposals, I encourage you all to think SMART, which stands for specific. Specific proposals are more likely to be funded and accomplished than general ones. You need to provide enough information and details so that there is no confusion about what you plan to do. You can consider the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why, and help making your proposal specific. It must be measurable. Measurable progress is important to ensure that you have a way to track the results of your project. It allows you to determine your progress and provides a way to know if a project is a success. It must be achievable. The proposed work must be realistic, given constraints such as time or resources or experience that you have. And reviewers will be concerned if they think that you're stretching yourself beyond what they believe is achievable. Your proposal has to be realistic. It has to have a work plan and budgets that are in alignment. And if these don't align, you may want to reevaluate one or both of these. Finally, you have to consider the time. Your proposed work must match with the time frame that you provide. Your deadlines must be realistic, and they have to match funding timelines that are given by the funder. So what can help you win that award? Here are some tips for success. One of the most important things you can do is start early, because funder deadlines are firm. If it states 5 p.m. by September 15th, you have to submit it by then. You also must be responsive to the guidelines. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to sound like a broken record before this is over, but you need to write what the foundation asks for. You should be clear and concise in your narrative, avoiding excess jargon. If permitted, it's really good if you can include any data or figures or charts to help illustrate your background and your expertise, as well as the proposed work that you are writing about. You should know your audience and you should write to them. Make it clear you understand the aims and the objectives of the foundation. It's also helpful if you can determine if the reviewers of your proposal are subject matter experts so that you know what type of language you should use in writing your proposal. It's very helpful if you can ask a colleague or one of us here at the Office of Foundation Relations to review your draft narratives and offer feedback. Sometimes that second set of eyes can be really helpful. You should also get familiar with the submission process and the platforms it needed. It's helpful to log in early to see if there's any additional documents that you need or any other steps to take, such as submitting information for letter writers. And just as it's important to start writing early, it's also really helpful if you can submit a bit early too, in order to avoid missing that deadline due to things like technology challenges, like an internet outage or the application portal going down. So sometimes even excellent ideas can not get funded, and there are several reasons. I'm pretty sure by now you can tell what the number one reason is. That's not following the rules. If you don't follow those funding guidelines, all that hard work you've done doesn't even make it to the review stage. So follow those guidelines, submit your application on time. But the good news is our office here is available to help ensure compliance and help move you towards submitting on time. Next, there can be a poor fit with the foundation's areas of interest or its priorities. So even before you start writing, make sure you understand the mission and priority of the foundation to which you apply, and that your proposed project truly fits in this area. So what if upon second consideration, you really think it doesn't? Come and have a chat with us at the Office of Foundation Relations. We might be able to help you identify funders who have a better fit for your work. Poorly written or rushed letters of intent and full proposals often don't get funded. So the best proposals are ones that weave a really good story. They explain the need, how you plan to address the problem, and how the particular foundation's mission matches your goals. Our office can provide comments to improve your narrative, as well as we can provide that second set of eyes to help spot and correct grammatical errors. Finally, concerns about the budget can sink a proposal. For example, if the budget isn't aligned to the project scope or if it exceeds the funder's range. I'd like to thank you all for attending this presentation. And once again, thanks to Research Commons for hosting me. I hope you've learned a little bit more about private foundations and what it takes to apply to them. And once again, I invite you all to attend the follow-up presentation on December 1st, which is called Introduction to the Heilmeier Catechism, which will delve more deeply into crafting a compelling and well-written proposal. Please let me know if you have any questions, and also please feel free to reach out to our office. The link to our contact page is listed above. And also these slides will be made available to you after the presentation with some of those resources that Brian will be sending out. Thanks again, and Brianna and I are open for questions. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat function of the Zoom meeting. So we have a, Brianna, you want to?
No, go ahead, Kathy. Go ahead, Kathy, and then I'll jump in.
Okay, so how long does it take for foundations to review a draft proposal and provide feedback? It definitely does depend. A lot of it will depend on exactly what else is in our pipeline at that point. We can potentially turn around very brief edits within a couple of days, but if it's something quite extensive, we might need more lead time. Now, I think Brianna will tell you that a lot of it depends on some of the other machinery going on with the university, doesn't it? So you might be able to tell them more about that, Brianna.
Yes, I guess I'll just jump in and say it's good. It's probably just a good rule of thumb to get some narrative pieces to us 2 weeks before the deadline. We could certainly work around schedules that we have to block off time depending on what the proposal needs. But if you want substantive edits with a lot of feedback, I would recommend 2 weeks before the deadline, probably if you can, if you really want someone diving in and helping you rework a narrative piece. If you send maybe just an abstract or a lay summary and that's all that you want the team to look at, which is perfectly okay, that might take a few days, like Kathy said. Just please nothing the day of the deadline or the day before. Otherwise, what you'll get is just not going to help you as much as it could otherwise. Looks like another question might have popped in. Do you want to read that one, Kathy?
Sure. If we're first starting on our grant writing journey, do you recommend starting with seeking funding from smaller organizations? This really depends. I mean, a lot of it depends on the scope of your project. As a proposal development specialist, my area of work is typically with these smaller organizations, but that's from groups that don't have as extensive research projects. So a lot of it really depends on your research needs. And I know we've had PIs that have had success with large grants in the start, haven't we? Early on, haven't we, Brianna? So, go for what you need for. Smaller grants can be helpful to kind of build up a relationship with a funder, but it's not necessary to start small. Would you agree?
Yes, and if your project is small and you're looking for preliminary data, seeking smaller funding, seed money, for example, is going to make sense for you. I think you seek funding where you have where your research aligns with priorities. And if you have a really well-developed project and strong mentorship, I think is really key when you first start grant writing. I think some of the most successful PIs that come to us as kind of new to this have mentors and peers look over their narratives. So think about people that you would send something to for feedback in addition to our team that are also in your subject matter area when you get started. I think that's really key to kind of set that up prior to diving into these applications so that the time spent is really worthwhile. But smaller or larger organizations isn't necessarily a factor. I think it's really a matter of how well developed is your project and how well aligned. If you still have some work to do, some data to gather, or a team to build, then spend the time there beforehand and do research on the side, but wait until it's fully ready to go.
We got another question. How can one demonstrate measurable impact for theoretical project proposals? Well, that's why that's a basic structure, not one size fits all. And that's why, as once again, I'm always going to tell you, read the funder guidelines. So if you have a theoretical project proposal, like an actual theoretical one, they're probably not going to ask for a project impact. So once again, you have to apply everything to a case-by-case basis.
Mm-hmm. One thing I'll add is Kathy mentioned SPIN. I think when you're new to exploring private foundation funding options, setting up SPIN is a really nice way to just start to learn about the landscape of funding in your area. It's not completely exhaustive by any means, but the more you're aware and the more you are keeping things on your radar, you're going to start to figure out what makes sense to spend time on and what funders make sense to pay attention to. So you're not just paying attention to everything, but you've sort of whittled it down to kind of approach it with some efficiency. So SPINs, I 100% recommend everybody set SPIN up. It's a great resource. It's not the only one that I would use, but it's a great resource to get going.
Oh, along with Brianna piggybacking on SPIN, there are also federal opportunities on SPIN. So this is a benefit for not just nonprofits, but federally funded opportunities as well. It has like everything in it. So.
Kathy, do you think it would be helpful to talk about proposal submission and like in motion, what that looks like? Would that be helpful? And what I mean is kind of the process of approvals and whatnot once, how our team works with the others.
That would probably be great for a future presentation. We are at time right now. This is a half
Oh,
half an
no.
hour. Yeah. If you have anything briefly you'd love to add, I'd be great, Brianna. But
No, I would just say we partner with the GMO, as Kathy mentioned, the same as you would for a federal grant, and they are routing everything most of the time. So we all work as a team. We're looped in. It's not two separate processes. So we are we have well-established relationships with GMO contacts and the Office of Sponsored Research. So it's not, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're providing an additional layer to that for these specific types of proposals. So it's very seamless. We're trying to make your life easier and make it a little less overwhelming.
do we have any more questions? Otherwise, we're basically at the end of our 30 minutes. I'm like I say, we're happy to answer more questions. Feel free to send us emails, or like I say, just reach out to us if you got any other questions. All right, then once again, thank you all for attending, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.